Yes, hey guys, welcome back to another predictions video, and in today's video I'm going to be predicting Garcia versus Duarte fight. If you're new around here though and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So going into this fight, Garcia is 23-1 with 19 KOs and Duarte is 26-1-1 with 21 KOs. This fight is a 12 round fight in the lightweight division. Garcia's last fight was a loss via KO in round 7 versus Davis, and Duarte's last fight was a win via stoppage in round 7 versus Keys. Duarte's loss came via split decision versus Estrella in 2019. Since then, he's been on to win 11 fights. He's on an 11 fight winning streak, and he's not gone to decision since then, and he's stopped every single one of his opponents since then. But to speak a bit more about what I've just been saying, so of course, this being a 12 round fight, I believe it's in the lightweight division. From what I've read, it's in the lightweight division, but I also thought Garcia had moved up to the super lightweight division, so I'm not entirely sure, but I believe it's in the lightweight division. Garcia's last fight, I mean, obviously it was the huge fight versus Davis. I'm going to, as always, kind of look into it a bit more in a moment, but the main questions is going to be around what's his mentality like coming off a defeat, and it being quite a bad defeat, and people saying that he quit and stuff like that. Is that going to affect him in a negative way or a positive way, in the way of he's going to want to either prove people wrong or just become demotivated? And we're going to have to wait and see with this one, and either way it's not really a discredit to lose against somebody like Davis because of course how good he is and him being one of, if not the best lightweights around at the moment. So it's not a discredit, and I think this fight it's still a very tough fight for him, and it could possibly cause an upset here, but I think somebody like Duarte is going to be able to come in with that underdog mentality, and it's going to be interesting to see how he reacts, because of course he is on such a good run at the moment. 11 fight KO streak, it's very impressive, and obviously it's nowhere near the kind of level of opponents of that of Garcia, but it's still against relatively good guys, and he's still winning by big stoppages. And so to rebuild from his loss in 2019, he's definitely done that, and done so with flying colours. But to speak about themselves as fighters, Garcia as a fighter, he's got fast hands, he's got snapping power, he's got a sharp left hook, he's precise, explosive, typically goes into fights confident. Obviously we'll have to wait and see with this one, but typically he goes in relatively confident. He's sharp, he puts on the pressure, he's willing to take risks, he can keep a range well, he's confident and competent at keeping a range, he feints well, he's got good movement, can counter very well, he will always respond to a shot, he aims to not get bullied, but he can also fight on the front or the back foot in the process if needed. When I say that he's aiming to not get bullied, I think against Davis, against somebody who is willing to stand off and is such a good counterpuncher himself, possibly that didn't really go in his favour, because that invited him on, and that gave him confidence, that boosted his confidence, that made him take risks, and therefore take unnecessary risks, which led to the shots which ended up putting him down. But he, against opponents maybe a bit more like a Duarte, who's a bit more front foot, he might be able to possibly stand his ground better or move around better and deal with the challenge, as well as being able to counter very well. And of course, electrifying hand speed, it's crazily fast, and a lot of opponents aren't going to be able to deal with that. And the fact it's also still got power with it as well is also something which put together is a lethal combination, and is very tough to deal with, especially if you're coming in on the offense quite strong, which Duarte does typically do. Negatives about him, of course, we're going to have to see where his head's at after this defeat, coming off a defeat for the first time, and it being on such a big stage with so many eyes on him. How's that going to affect him? And the fact he's also young as well, so that's another thing that possibly see where his mindset is at as a young fighter. Is he willing to dig deep? I mean, there's questions about if he possibly quit or anything like that. Obviously you weren't there, nobody was there bar Garcia, like, to be able to field the shot of Davis, so we don't really know how bad that shot was and what effect that had on him. But people are questioning if he's willing to dig deep, and if he has that heart possibly necessary to go into fights which are sometimes possibly tougher. He may be a bit more tentative in this fight, because he may be a bit more reluctant to throw as a result of the counters that were responded from Davis, but I feel like realistically shouldn't be, because Duarte isn't really a counterpuncher at all. He sometimes becomes a bit predictable. He's hard to predict because of how fast he is, but he can and did become a slight bit predictable against Davis, where he was just kind of going in with that sharp, that very good left hook of his, but Davis was able to read that and didn't really get caught with it at all, and possibly that was just becoming a little bit predictable at times, and that set up the counter for Davis. He's shown now he can be hurt, especially that to the body, being knocked down in two of his fights. Well, Davis won and the Campbell one, has both proven that he can be hurt to the body, and that's a possible weakness for him. He can smother his work a little bit in close at times, possibly. I don't know if he's aggressive enough, because obviously a lot of fighters aren't, especially inside fighters, but I don't know if he's aggressive enough to fight on the inside. I think when he is fighting on the inside, especially against that of Davis, he was trying to push it and was trying to fight on the inside, but he just looked like he was trying to force that aggression, and that's when you're trying to force the fight, and that's when weaknesses and risks, unnecessary risks, can be taken. He sometimes can be timed coming in. He doesn't have crazily good head movement, so he can be timed coming in. He sometimes should probably set up his shots a bit more. I think he possibly wasn't really doing that against Davis. And like I said, possibly he's not even aggressive enough in the first place. I don't know, that's maybe just me looking a bit too deep into it, but that's Garcia in my opinion. Duarte, as a fighter, he's a very aggressive fighter. He's a hard hitter, pressure fighter, physically strong. He'll break you down, wear you down, use his strength. He's got high output. He's consistent. He'll walk you down. He's a fast starter, relentless, tough, got high guard. He will pounce on attacks when he feels like he possibly gets you hurt. He's very good at getting people out of there. He's hard to control, changes levels, bullies you, overwhelms you. He's hard to move back himself, and he's just one of them fighters which I think this is going to make for a tough fight. People are possibly, and Garcia possibly, might be overlooking Duarte as an opponent who's just supposed to get him back into the big fights and supposed to roll over and just accept it. But this guy he's a tough guy, and from his last performance especially, he was so aggressive, really put the pressure on Keys, and was just way too physically dominant, way too physically strong, and just fully overwhelmed him and broke him down. And you have to be so mentally tough to be able to go for a whole fight where you're against somebody like Duarte, who is constantly going to put the pressure on and be relentless with it. And to be fair, he doesn't really leave much openings. He doesn't really have a defense bar the high guard, but from that high guard, he doesn't really leave many openings, and it's a very compact guard as well. And yeah, it's going to be very difficult for Garcia to break him down, but I think with his fast hands and his counters, he can do it. But it's just if the fact he's going to be able to keep switched on for as long as the fight possibly goes on for, with Duarte constantly trying to press you, constantly trying to bully you, and hitting you with big shots in the process. Negatives about Duarte: accuracy can be off at times. I think he's then open to counters if he misses a shot and kind of leans in with it and overcommits with it. He, like I said, open to counters. At a mid-range, I think he struggles a bit more. So if Garcia can keep moving around the ring, changing up his movements, circling around very nicely, then and just not getting cornered too much, because I don't feel like Duarte is especially good at cutting off the ring, then possibly he can then use his fast hands and then be able to pick up his shots. But he's got to be moving his head, he's got to be moving his legs, lateral movement. He's got to be utilising that Garcia. Duarte's got a lack of head movement, a lack of defensive lateral movement, and so he is open to get hit, even if it is a lot of it just hitting the guard. He is going for a big step up here, obviously, like I mentioned. He's heavy-footed as well, so if you could possibly put on the pressure and hurt him and then put him on the back foot, then how's he going to react? And even if, obviously, it's tough to get on the back foot, but if he can, then we'll have to wait and see. Maybe he might not respect Garcia's power and don't really seem to respect a lot of people's power, but you have to wait and see. And especially if you can time it well, then you kind of earn respect just from timing alone. Like I said, he lunges in, crosses his feet at times, can sit at range a bit too long after punching, and like I said, he can struggle cutting off the ring a bit at times. Garcia is the favourite for this fight, and I think that Duarte will win via TKO in round 10. In my opinion, I think Duarte is just going to be able to overwhelm him and break him down and be too much for him, and I just don't see him respecting Garcia's power. And obviously timing, it can be a lot of stuff like I mentioned, and if Garcia can time a shot and move around and counter with his fast hands, and possibly could hurt him coming in, but I just think Duarte is going to be able to push him back, and I just don't know if Garcia possibly has that mental toughness. To be fair, watching that kind of viral clip that's gone around from the press conference the other day of Garcia speaking about Oscar De La Hoya and Bernard Hopkins, and he seems like he wants to prove a point, and he seems very much up for it and determined, and people are saying he looks like a bit more of a man and kind of growing into a bit more of an adult. But we'll have to wait and see if that's going to be the case or not. I think Duarte is going to get the upset here, get the win, possibly get a stoppage. I think it could be a late stoppage. Then who he could go on to fight? I think that opens up more big fights. I think Golden Boy need more and more big fights, and if they don't have something like Garcia, that they're definitely going to push something like Duarte. Obviously, they could make Duarte fight Garcia again, so that possibly could be an option. But you also look at somebody like Zepeda, who's also with Golden Boy. That could be a fight to make. Or Martin, I don't believe he's with Golden Boy, but that could be also another fight to make. But we'd have to wait and see. And of course, Duarte has to get through something like Garcia first. But yeah, that is it for today's video. I hope you did enjoy. Like if you did, like this, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.